What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you tuning in today. Now, we got a few things that I want to jump into, some thoughts on what's going on with the Suns right now, and then also a little talk for the Arizona State men's basketball team as Bobby Hurley survives, it looks like, and we'll get another year here with the Sun Devils. But I want to start with the Suns. Now, obviously, big game tonight, getting ready to square off against the Rockets, a really good team, part of a just brutal road trip here for Phoenix. So we'll see how that goes, coming off, another really tough loss and then watching the Mavericks win also. So this pretty big game for them. Going to have to find some wins if they're going to catch the Mavericks. The interesting thing right now is we keep hearing more and more talk out of this team, all kind of aimed towards this offseason and trades that they're going to be thinking about doing and looking for in players. And kind of, it feels a little bit like even the team has started to say that this season is kind of sailed. It's kind of over. Not that wrong. I mean, they can make the play-in, but I don't know how many people are really expecting this team to make like a serious run, even though they said if they do, that would be the one determining factor where they decide not to move off KD. If in this last, 20 games now, they can show them a reason why they need to keep it all together. But at the same time, they start just leaking out some reports of what they're interested in trade talks. And everyone knew KD was kind of a guy that was on the block. But now we're starting to get talks also about Devin Booker. And I said this earlier this year. If they want to press a full reboot, you got to move off of Devin Booker, as much as that is going to really just kind of suck for the fans, suck for the fan base, for the franchise. But he is by far the piece on this team that can acquire the most assets that can really help them start a complete rebuild and kind of build this thing from the ground up. Now, reportedly, what they said, if they did decide to try and move off him this summer, the asking price would be 4 first-round picks and a rising star that's going to be in like his 3rd or 4th year. So a guy that's a little bit more established and a little bit proven. That actually seems really reasonable. I would think they could even maybe get a little bit more than that, especially if you go to a place like OKC. OKC's got a treasure chest of first-round picks. You can get a ton from them, and you can go ahead and pick up all types of young talent that they got on that roster that's not paid yet, that is going to be really good on the roster, really good on the salary cap, and you can go ahead and get probably as many draft picks as you want. But my good friend Connor over here at Burn City wrote a really interesting article this week saying that would be the worst move that this team could do, that Booker doesn't know anything to the franchise, but he's given him some of his best years. He's a guy that's been part of the team and the program through and through, and to try and move off of him now would be kind of just an absolute mistake. I thought about it for a long time, and I was trying to get a comp because it's not like Booker is super young. He's kind of just getting into his prime when you look at his age and when you look at his skill set. And I was trying to find a comp, and I came up with one that actually is really interesting because it's one that Booker's been comped to as well. This situation reminds me a little bit of the Lakers and with Kobe Bryant. So right after the Lakers won their three-peat, the next year they don't get there. They lose in the Western Conference Finals. They reboot in a hurry that next year. They bring in Karl Malone. They bring in Gary Payton. They have this what looked to be a super team, and then all of a sudden they run into the Pistons in the finals and win one game, and at that point it all starts falling apart. O'Neal wants out. They kind of hit this whole reboot, and it reminds me a lot of where the Suns are right now, in that Kobe was a guy still kind of getting ready to enter in his prime. He wasn't quite there yet, but you knew this guy was going to be just something absolute special, and he'd shown a lot already. And he had not a great team around him. And for the next few years, the Lakers really, really struggled around Kobe. And he was mad at everybody, mad at the franchise, mad at, the ownership. And he had demanded a trade. And there's so many legendary stories about how he almost got traded to the Clippers before Jerry West told him that, like, don't go there, and that he almost got traded to Detroit, and that Memphis was in the mix, and all of these teams that were thinking about trying to make a push on him, and that the Suns or that the Lakers were thinking about pulling the trigger on some of these things and weren't sure what to do. Now it's different in that it's not like Booker's disgruntled right now, but it's the same thing in that, like, the Lakers could have pressed the reset button, got rid of Kobe, and just try to go out and get draft picks and kind of start from ground zero again. And same spot, they would have gotten a lot. They would have gotten a haul for Kobe at that point. But the idea of a soft reboot is what the Suns would be thinking about, which is what the Lakers did in that situation, where they kept their star, and it took them a few years to get the pieces around them right. When you traded Shaq, they got Lamar Odom back. They got a few other pieces that were valuable pieces down the stretch for them, and guys that kind of contributed. They also got a lot of junk that was off the roster the next couple of years. And for years, they kind of struggled, which is what I think will happen to the Suns if they trade KD this offseason. They're going to struggle for a couple of years. They're going to have a lot of guys, and you're going to sit there, and at that point, maybe Booker starts to get really kind of frustrated with everything that's going on. But in the Lakers case, and I'm saying this could happen with the Suns, you make a couple right moves that, Booker then enters into his prime. The guy's only 28 right now. Normally people think that your prime is 27 to 33, somewhere in there. So he's right in the middle of his prime. So if you have 2 bad years, he ends up being 30. And then by that point, this roster, look how fast rosters turn over in the NBA. I mean, it is insanely quick. So 2 years from now, could the Suns have rebuilt this roster kind of around Booker and added a few pieces, and at that point they're close to a contender again or close to being in the mix? Absolutely. The Western Conference is going to look a lot different in 2 years. Oklahoma City is going to have to pay a supermax this summer to Shea. Their roster is going to start getting depleted the moment they have to pay all of those guys, because right now what's amazing about it is all of their talent are on really good, affordable deals. It's not going to stay like that. 2 years, you would think LeBron will be out of the league. The Lakers will theoretically take a step back, and it'll just be Luka. And you look around at everyone else, who knows? Who knows? 2 years ago, the Kings were in the playoffs. I mean, 2 years ago, the Pistons won like 6 games. They're all of a sudden looking like a team that could make some noise in the playoffs. Could that be the Suns? Sure. They already have one of the hardest things to find, which is a star. And I've always just been in the business that you don't trade your stars, because there's only so many of those guys. You maintain your stars and you try to find the role pieces around them. But it's a lot harder to find stars than it is to find role pieces, especially one like Booker, who's as low maintenance as you will ever find for a star, and for a guy that is as much about the team, the franchise, the program as he is. So while that's, I mean, theoretically, like, say they do get those draft picks and they do get a player for him, that's a good haul. I think they're better off keeping him. I think Connor makes a lot of strong points in his article. You should check it out on birdcity.com. But I think they're better off keeping him, trading KD, waiting in 2 years. You're going to have a lot more salary cap space after Bradley Beal's off the books, and building around that, knowing that you'll still have 3 years at that point of prime Devin Booker. And you see what you can do. The landscape of the league is going to look a lot different. A lot different in 2 years than it does. It always does. It always flips over like that. So I don't love it. I wouldn't want to trade him. Even for as much as that gets you back, I wouldn't want to trade him. The other part with the Suns is the asking price came out for KD where they said they wanted 3 first-round picks for him. And I'd said before and been on the record, I didn't think they're going to get 3 first-round picks. If they do, that's an awesome job, just simply because not that today he's not worth it, because I think he is. It's purely based off of the fact that he's getting older, and this guy's going to be 37 next year. And so if you're trading him, you're probably signing him to a bit of an extension. So is this team at some point, he's got to come down to earth a little bit. He's not going to keep averaging 27, 6, and 5 forever. So it's just the simple fact that whatever team's trading for him knows that they're not going to have this player for 3 years, that he's going to be really good this year, and that decline has got to be coming down the line. We're getting spoiled by what we see out of LeBron. Even Curry came back down to earth a little bit, even though he's been a little bit of resurgence recently. But, like, Father Time is undefeated. It's going to catch him, and he will eventually lose a step. And not saying he won't be a good player, not saying he's not a player that you would want on a team. I'm just saying the value of KD in a trade market at 37 is vastly different than what it was when the Suns traded for him when he's 33, somewhere around there. So what I think this is, pretty standard bargaining, pretty standard. Anybody who's ever went out and bought a car before, I mean, this is what it is. The Suns right now are selling a Mercedes, and there's a slapping a sign out there that says how much the asking price is for it, what they're looking for. And if someone wants to come pay it at full value, I mean, high fives all around to Phoenix. If they get 3 first-round picks for him, that's a solid haul. That is a great win, particularly if they're good picks, which, we have to wait and see. Not all first-round picks are built the same, so if they can get ones that are early on in the draft, awesome. I have my doubts. But I don't think they're really expecting to. I think what they're doing is just saying, this is what we would like. This is what the standard is. And they're trying to set the market knowing that people are going to try and then bid it down a little bit and be like, oh, yeah, but KD's, maybe he would have a few years ago, but he's so old now. I think we only can give you 2 firsts and a second. And you start the negotiation process. So they're trying to set the bar at that point. I expect that they're going to get talked down a little bit. And I expect that the Suns know that. The question is, how high can they keep it? And a lot of that depends on how many people are going to come on this bidding war. How many people can they get interested in trying to make a push for it? Because the more bidders you got, the more money you're going to make, the more value that you're going to get in that return. So a huge part of this is how many pieces, how many teams are going to be interested in going after Durant, which goes back to how these teams do in the postseason. If you flame out, if you become desperate, if you have just an untimely early departure, if teams feel like they need to shake it up, if something didn't work, that's when it's time to bring in the hay. That's when it's time to go out and make your money for the Suns. So you're hoping teams dramatically underachieve in this postseason that have those assets, and they decide they got to go all in. And when that happens, sometimes it works out for them. Sometimes they go get the title. Look at Toronto. Toronto decided to go all in knowing that they were only going to get 1 year with Kawhi, or that there was a good chance at least. Sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't happen that way. You go all in, you don't win it, and then all of a sudden now you kind of sacrifice your future a little bit. It's kind of what the Suns did a little bit. But best case scenario. So I think this was just setting the market. I think that's all it was. We'll see if they get talked down. We'll see if they can keep it up there. And now it's about how many teams kind of want to come out there and make a push for KD. Last little thing I want to talk about, Arizona State had a nice little podcast on it a few days ago. Bobby Hurley is somehow going to survive and keep his job at Arizona State, even though they get bounced in the Big 12 tournament. And not a great year. We can say it like that. Pretty disappointing season. They finished 13-19 overall. They were in 15th place in the Big 12. And This now means that they've had one winning season in the last 5 years and just really underwhelming, even for a program not necessarily known as the premier program in that league or one that's going to always be out there and kind of competing for national championships. That's not what the bar is set at Arizona State. But even with that, just not great, you know. And I can't even take credit for this. Someone had it in the comment section on that last one about him, and it's so true. It's kind of what stuck in my head. It said if this guy's name was Bobby Johnson rather than Bobby Hurley, he would have been gone years ago. And that's kind of what it feels like. We're hanging on to a guy that's got a big name or a guy that's got a good bloodline and giving him more and more chances because of that name. But he's been given a lot of grace and a lot of patience for a guy that has not delivered much. And there's a little less excuse for it now with the portal, with the way that college basketball works. You can change your roster in one offseason. Pretty much everybody does that competes. And so now it's how quickly can you recruit? How can you go out and get them? And how tight is that leash going to be next year? Do they have to make the tournament next year for him to get another season? What are the expectations now after this? It's got to be better than this. It's got to be better than 4 losing seasons in 5. It's got to be better than only making the NCAA tournament 3 times, and one of them was that first 4 in. It's got to be better than where it's at right now. The expectations at Arizona State aren't wildly high, but they're higher than where it's at right now. I mean, it's just, this can't be acceptable. I don't love giving him another year, to be honest, but it is what it is at this point, and now the pressure is on for them to do something, to go out and perform. They have a decent recruiting class coming in. Now it's what guys can you get from the portal, and it's a prove it year, if ever. I don't even know if it's a prove it year. It's worse than that. It's give us a reason not to is where it's at right now, because this feels a little bit like we don't want to pay his buyout. We want to save a little bit of money, and so the clock is ticking already, and it's like we would like to get you, but maybe it's too expensive. I don't know. It's a frustrating move, I think. And I think fans have a right to be upset and a little frustrated over it, because it's allowing negligence in some way, you know? Like it hasn't worked, and we're still just kind of allowing it at this point. So we'll see. Pressure's on. He's got to have a big year. He's got to show that he deserves to be here, because this is going to be his last opportunity. With as hot as that seat was, you can't go 500 or worse again next year, especially with as bad as the Big 12 was this year. And that's where it comes down to, because they didn't have a bad non-conference start to the year as far as wins and losses go. But when it came to playing against their peers, underwhelming the whole year. So Arizona State decided to make their bed, see how they sleep in it next year. And, you know, they save a little bit of money, but kind of at what cost? Another year where not a lot of faith, not a lot of faith that this year is going to be somehow kind of a difference, but hopeful. So we'll have to all wait and see.